channels. And then I'm going to start today's webinar. And we're going to be talking about how you scale a sales engine. I'm going to talk about what it is, how it works, and some of the vital elements that you need. And there's 5 that we're going to be looking at. So I'm just checking that the streams are working a-okay. If you want to join me in the chat, do let me know where you're joining from, so that we can all see you and engage with you. I can see David has joined. So if you want to join the session, interact in the chat. It'll go much more interesting if you interact in the chat. Tell me where you're joining from. Tell me a bit about what your struggles are in sales. So if you've got any challenges that you see, whether it's because of the climate at the moment, whatever's going on, I really want to kind of break down some of the vital elements for selling in the 21st century. Things have moved on, and the last few years things have moved on. So two and a bit years of forced digitization has really changed the way we do business. And so we're going to be talking about scaling your sales engine. Today's session is part of Mentor Group's Sales Academy, which is for small business owners, small sales teams, and it provides enterprise level sales training and skills to help you succeed. So we're going to be giving you some components that are going to add value to your world today, get you to think about some of the key areas maybe you're not so strong in, so that you can really go, we're going to maximize this. We're going to make the best of every opportunity. We're going to maximize our sales team time. And importantly, we're also going to make sure that we are not missing some components that could be holding us back, slowing our deals down, or leaving clients or customers sat on the fence where they're like, should we, shouldn't we? Particularly right now, some businesses will be only deciding to spend on things that are absolutely essential. And so often you've got to make that case to show people that this is the time to make that decision, not by pressure, but by a compelling case. So welcome, David. Welcome, Vanessa. It's great to have you here. And some people are joining and watching on YouTube. I can see some people watching us on YouTube, and some are watching on LinkedIn, which is awesome. Yeah, brilliant to have you all here. So let's just look at what we're going to cover today. I'll do a quick intro. If you've never heard of Sales Academy, it's run by Mentor Group. Mentor Group is one of the big influential sales enablement companies that works with enterprise level businesses that have global footprints to improve sales performance and sales transformation, where they go, we've got a great team, but how do we make them better? We've got a brilliant process, but how do we make it better? And Sales Academy is effectively that packaged in an accessible, easy to use way for small businesses. So it's powered by Mentor Group. It's all the same content and materials that you can access and leverage in your small business or with a small sales team. As proven strategies. And the great thing is you can call through the system, you can call on an expert on demand to be able to get the help when you're struggling. And crazily, we will get to the point here. It's £1 a day. It's £1 a day. It's mad. So if you want to find out more, there's an email address on screen. You can get a discount to join if you want to. I'll just do this now so you've got it. The email address is on screen, info@mentorgroup.co.uk. And if you want to get access to it, you can go in, get it the access, give it to your team, give it, it's good for a business owner. If you're a solopreneur, it's also useful because there's a lot of stuff that you've got to do. You are marketer, salesperson, CFO, CEO. So it's a great little tool, and it's worth its weight in gold. So Sales Academy, that's what it's all about. So we're going to give you some free things to think about today, some insights to think about. Maybe you'll find the spaces where you're weak and you need to improve, and you'll find your strengths. But we're going to break that down today. So hi, Alan. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, David. Feel free to jump in the chat, ask questions. As I call it, thumb screw me. So if there's something that's going on in your world right now, and you think, how would you overcome this issue? How would you handle this objection? We're finding this. How would you approach that? I'm more than happy to answer any questions as we go as well. Brill. So there's some vital components of sales and a sales engine that allows your business to scale. So if you think about it, all of the sales process from the lead coming in or you generating the lead from prospecting, there are a series of steps that happen. Sales is just not telling people, do you want to buy my stuff, and hoping that that's what's going to happen. But yet, let's be honest, a lot of what we see, it's a little bit like a bandwagon at the moment. So a bit of gadgetry or a bit of tech comes out and people get excited about it. And so they dive in, but actually the skill of selling is often absent. And we see this in our own emails, in our calls that we receive, in our outreach messages on LinkedIn. We see that there's a lot of effort, a lot of energy, but not a lot of skill. Just go look in your inbox. Just go look in your LinkedIn message box. You'll see generic sales messages from salespeople trying to make sales. They're trying their hardest, but something's not connecting, and it's the skill. So let's have a look at this today. So we're going to look at all of those components. I'm going to do it as kind of as conversational as we can, and the more interaction you bring to the table, the better this will be, and the more enjoyable and more valuable a session it will be than me just sharing stuff. So hi, Mark. Welcome. And I can see some other people joining on YouTube as well, which is awesome. So the state of sales, let's just look at where it is. And we got some stats from Forbes that I think will be really useful in helping us understand where we really are. So according to Forbes, 55% of salespeople lack any basic sales skills. And to be fair, we can say that, that's the fault of the salesperson. We can say that they should upskill themselves. Absolutely. But it's one of the only professions that the education system doesn't really talk about. So we have some really talented people coming out of the education system and thrown into, SDR jobs, sales development roles and junior sales roles. And all they're doing is learning from what they see. So basically, it's a whole discipline, and it is a discipline. Sales is a discipline that you kind of just figure out. Marketing, you go to university, you get a degree. There's the fundamental principles are taught into you. But with sales, most of the time, you will go into a job, you will get hired for a job, and you will learn on the job from other people who are a bit better than you. Now, we all hear great stories of people who've studied great salespeople. Yeah, we see that. But the reality is more than half of all salespeople don't understand some of the key elements of how to sell effectively. So they've learned from others. And as a result, is it any wonder we have an overriding principle now that sales is simply a numbers game? And I think that does a disservice to the discipline. I think because, yes, when you've got a commodity product, you've got to sell 20,000 widgets. Yes, there is an element of it's a numbers game. You've got to sell 20,000. But the skill is in how can we sell 20,000 with the most efficient process. By that, I mean, think about the stages of the sale, the prospecting, the getting the engagement, the first meeting, all of that stuff. The skill comes into making that bit efficient. And I think a lot of that is not taught. It's something actually most salespeople learn once they get through their sales development and they're getting more senior into the selling. They actually mature because they've done so much selling. They know it, but it shouldn't be that way, particularly for businesses where they're smaller and they might be bringing in junior salespeople and they need to get the best out of that team. So, you look at this stat and you go, oh, 55% lack any basic skills. Well, that means somebody's got to teach them. Somebody's got to train them. Somebody is their proving ground. And often it's smaller businesses where salespeople prove their value. So one of the things I would say to you, whether or not you think, go check out Sales Academy, but either way, you want to make sure that learning curve is, or they learn and perfect their craft as quickly as possible, because in the enterprise world, the time for a salesperson to be profitable can be anywhere from 6 to 18 months to be where that salesperson is positively, profitably generating revenue. So if you're hiring salespeople, think about this. How am I going to help that salesperson's time to revenue go up? How am I going to help that salesperson's skill to improve so they close more deals, so that they create more opportunities, and so that they shorten the deal cycle? Sometimes if we have a lack of skill, we have very earnest salespeople. I'm not criticizing sales, but we have very earnest people who are committed to getting a deal. Sean, happily share. We can happily send you the replay. If you drop us an email to info@mentorgroup.co.uk, we'll send you a copy of this presentation. So 55% lack the skills. And so you can see how if you leave a decision maker in doubt, where they go away and think, do you know what, we need to consider this, you have to ask the question, does the decision maker go away to consider this because they are not sure if the product or service is a good fit? Or do they go away to think about whether the salesperson's left them with doubts that could have been closed? So the basic sales skills are essential if you want an effective sales team. So whatever you do from today's presentation, if you go, no, I'm not up for Sales Academy, you need to invest in the team. But then, interestingly, I know at Mentor Group, we've seen the same thing. The more you invest in your salespeople, the better performing they become, because they pick up things and go, that's why that didn't work. I was working with a client recently, and they were sending proposals. And as they sent their proposals, there was just a few fundamentals missing in the way they put the email together with the proposal that would be more persuasive and more engaging for the prospect. Just changing a tweak to an email, the skill of knowing what's a good thing to put in the email with the proposal, can actually make a huge difference. Two lines we added to that email, and we saw incredible improved response where the prospect was saying, that's exactly what we need. Great. And so what you're getting is the prospect's agreement that this is the right fit. So 76% of businesses see profits rise by 20% or more after sales enablement. And for those joining in a small business context and go sales enablement, well, sales enablement is, it's an element of sales training, but it goes a little bit further, because rather than just give theory, you give practical application as part of the training. So you enable salespeople to do their jobs better. And that's really the principle. So sales training, just giving information. So if you go to a website and print information off and say, there, read that, the actual retention rate of just giving information is like less than 20%. It's tiny. So you can make marginal gains from just reading information. But sales enablement is a way of delivering sales skills and sales training in a way that's more practical and implementable, so that people go away and do something with it. So the other interesting stat about this as well is if you spend £1, this is an industry stat, £1, for every £1 you spend helping a salesperson improve equals £24 of improved performance and revenue and results. Incredible. That it's fascinating to think that, through all our education system, even to this day, there is very little in terms of helping salespeople. So sales has changed. There's no denying it, not just in the last 2 or 3 years with what's happened, but it's actually changed over time. Many of the principles have stayed the same, but we now have more technology involved in sales. And so there is so much power at a salesperson's fingertips and so much risk for a business, because it's not just the knowledge of how to use this technology and that technology, which is something you can do on YouTube. It's actually the skill to know what to put in it. Right now, there's software out there. You can send out 200 emails a day on autopilot. But how do you write that persuasive message to get the prospect to engage? What's the process you're going to put through? These are all sales skills that build a strong pipeline, but they're absent from the technology. People see technology as the main solution. And whilst technology gives salespeople opportunity, the skill behind it is where it matters. The skill of crafting that email, of following up, of having a process, all of that stuff is key. You know, just implementing a process in a sales team, you know, if you've kind of organically grown your sales team, you probably find that, you know, people do it their own way and it's all figured out. And, but actually having a process will eliminate what we call a leaky pipeline, a leaky funnel, where you've got things going through, but because somebody doesn't bite immediately, or because somebody doesn't respond quickly, or because something takes too long, the nurturing stops. And so the leaky pipeline, or the leaky funnel in this context, could be simply the skill of knowing how to follow up and nurture a prospect is absent. And as a result, you're losing opportunity. So technology is a big thing. And whilst there's lots of exciting things we can do with technology, it's only as good as its user. It's only as good as the person behind it. And so, again, look in your inbox, look in your LinkedIn messages, look at what's going on, and you see messages, sales outreach that just isn't focused. You see sales outreach that isn't targeted. You see generic messaging that's not speaking to the value and the pain points. It's not even trying to create a conversation. So, you know, I don't need to tell you this. You could see it for yourself. You see it in your inbox every day. You see it in your LinkedIn messages every day. People with a lack of skill, sales skills, using technology. And what happens is the whole thing becomes a numbers game. And like I said, you know, some businesses have that numbers game model and need to have it. But if it's a numbers game because of a lack of skill, that's a problem. If it's a numbers game because you've got 1,000 or 10,000 products to sell, that still needs a strategy. But if you're selling value, you're trying to sell value, and it's all about numbers and churning, there's some disconnect. So skill behind the technology is an absolute must. Otherwise, you're missing opportunities. And in these days of, you know, GDPR and privacy regulation, you know, you might have 1 or 2 opportunities with prospects, and that lack of skill could, you know, bungle it quite simply. Is everybody okay, by the way? Can everybody hear me all right? Please do ask questions in the chat. That would be really helpful to keep it interactive. Sean, I've seen your question there. I'll try and answer some questions as we go, as you put stuff in. So I'll try and answer as we go. So there's 5 core elements to a strong sales engine. And I want to share a little bit on each one in today's session. I won't be able to go into mass chunks of detail just because we've only got a short time. But again, if you want to know a bit more about this, drop us an email. We can send you a replay of the video. And if you want to go, hey, can I have a look at this? I want to get my sales team using Sales Academy. You can literally get your, get your team access. And like I said, it's £1 a day per user. It's nothing. Right, here we go. So 5 core elements to a strong sales engine. And again, what I mean by a sales engine is that the stages of the process work. Yeah. The development, the nurturing, the meetings, the negotiations, the whole end-to-end of sales process needs to work. And if it doesn't work, if there's a weak spot in there, you lose revenue. If there's a weak spot in there, you lose opportunity. If there's a weak spot in there, you might lose margin. Yeah. And fundamentally, if there's a weak spot, that sales process might get longer. Yeah. Because if you don't do the work to convince those prospects that you're the right choice, they may sit on it for a few weeks. They may debate it. You might lose out to a competitor because your process isn't as refined and as focused. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying just physically the process, the person driving the process, they're the biggest asset, aren't they? It's the person driving the process. Anybody can build a process on a piece of technology, but the person behind it, the way they're thinking about it, the way they understand their customers, the way they understand the product and service, all of those matter. So 5 core elements to a strong sales engine. Let's have a look at some of them. Now, sorry to patronize you, but I'm just gonna start at the beginning. So sales 101, planning. You know, I've worked, and the team at Mentor have worked with a load of amazing clients and global big companies. And because of that skill set deficit that comes because the education system, we don't have, you know, even a base level in the education system of sales training and understanding, which is one of the, we're all selling. Yeah, we're all selling. Planning. You look at a sales environment, where's the plan of how they're going to hit their targets? Most people, and this is common across industries, most companies have what we call pipeline issues, whereby they don't know how strong or solid their pipeline is. It can be for a variety of reasons, but some obvious ones. Salespeople haven't planned, and so what they have is just a kind of mental list that they put on a spreadsheet of things that they think could be good. There's no level of quality or assessment of what's real, what's hard, what's soft, and what's fantasy. So planning is really important. And if you don't have a plan, understand how to plan your sales process, if you don't understand your sales activity, it will be a bit gung-ho. So having a step-by-step plan, even down to a cadence, yeah, and saying, we're going to work on this cadence. From a business point of view, that helps you to track where people are up to, brings some accountability, but it also helps the salesperson and the sales team really understand what their key priorities and key actions should be. We all familiar with, hopefully we're all familiar with CRMs, making it a plan of activity and even diarizing time to work on the CRM so that people don't end up burning hours when they should be talking to potential customers trying to do admin. So planning the sales process, the sales journey, the sales activity becomes fundamental. Without it, you're just kind of gung-ho. You're just playing. Yeah. And, you know, salespeople are fundamentally the revenue generators. Without them, if they're just doing the best they can do without the skill or the planning, your business is at the mercy of their success without a plan. So helping salespeople understand how to plan, the value of planning, and let them see how it can make them a better salesperson and improve their performance is key. And it may start with a very simple plan. It may start with as simple as on Mondays, we're going to do this, and on Wednesdays, we're going to do this, and on Thursdays, we're going to do this. It may be, you're going to tackle this vertical, you're going to tackle this vertical, but some plan, one plan, a plan would help if you've got nothing. But actually, there's keys to planning and planning the sales process, planning the sales activity, planning the approaches that actually will streamline and fire up that engine. Prospecting. You would think prospecting is something every salesperson knows, but if you talk to most salespeople, they've learned it from somebody else. They've learned their sales prospecting activity based on observing somebody else. And so if you think about it, a lot of our salespeople of today have started out as a junior and they've learned it, passed it on, and it's a skill that's being passed on. But prospecting is like, how do I find opportunities? There's obviously, if you get leads from your website and your salespeople are following them up, brilliant. But how do they go and find opportunities for themselves? How do we motivate them to do that? How do we motivate them to find the time? And prospecting is something that is a tough job. It's not the most exciting of jobs. How do we motivate the team to do that? Well, simple things. Giving them a format, giving them a structure to be able to do it, giving them a process so that they understand what prospecting is and it isn't. A lot of people, look at your inbox, look at your LinkedIn. You'll see people literally what they call prospecting is they're fishing, saying, hey, do you need this? We all know that a lot of people, and it leads me to the third point, a lot of businesses don't see their need for a product or service just by saying, hey, do you need this? You're appealing to a fraction of a percent of people who go, do you know what? I'm actually looking for that right now. So creating the value and helping people see the value of a conversation, the value of an opportunity is actually a skill. It's a skill. And if you have salespeople who understand this is our value and this is our value to this prospect, you will find that your team are more persuasive because they're able to really find the value. They're able to see and not just say, hey, this is a great product. Everybody says it's a great product. They'll actually be able to go, this is how this product can really help you. Which kind of leads me to point 4. You can't really sell effectively until you understand the customer's pain points. You can't really sell to them in a way that's effective until you understand what their needs are. What's their priorities? Whatever service or product you sell, there's going to be people and prospects and customers and decision makers who have a different need. It's always going to be slightly different. So if you've got 4 key benefits of your product or service, one of the things you want to be doing with your questioning skills is not interrogating, first of all. We don't want to interrogate people, so it feels like, this feels like an interview. But we do want to kind of draw out of people what's their key driver, what's their key issue right now that we know one of our key benefits can address. Because if we just barge in and say we can do this, we might miss it totally. So the questioning skills to draw out of the prospect, to draw out of the decision maker where their mind's at, where they think the value is, so that we can tack into that, so we can show more of what they see as valuable and not focus on features and benefits that are not relevant or not as a priority. The danger of not having great questioning skills is that you end up in a position where you focus on the wrong benefit, and then you realize halfway through the conversation that actually that's not a priority for them, but they're already kind of switched off from the conversation because you've just gone with feature and benefit A when they're actually interested in feature and benefit C or D. And you've lost half the momentum and energy and excitement in that call because you just didn't draw out of the prospect their need. And this is very common where there's been no backstory or support for the salespeople in terms of internally within the company, so business owners here and sales managers here, your job is to help the salespeople understand the real benefits to the target audience, to the market of that product or service. Sorry, my mic keeps my mic keeps moving. So questioning skills really, really important if you want to drive that engine. It helps you avoid tacking into features and benefits that are of no value to the prospect. Maybe I should have put these points the other way around. Questioning skills to create the value. You can't create the value without understanding the questions and questioning the prospect. And again, it's not an interrogation. It's just a conversational skill to be able to draw out where the prospect's at, where they see the opportunity, or where you can see the opportunity to add value into their world. In other words, what's the key benefit that's going to get them to say yes? Simply put. So outcome-based selling. Outcome-based selling. We've always heard it's sell the benefits, not the features. We hear that, but how do you actually do that as a salesperson? Well, typically what you find is that when a salesperson doesn't understand the product, when a salesperson doesn't understand the market, and when a salesperson doesn't understand outcome-based selling, they will do their level best to sell what you are making or providing to clients. They will do their absolute utmost. But what happens is when they don't understand the outcomes that can be delivered, they revert to features. So what happens is they describe the product. And then what happens is the value of that product in the client's mind comes down, because now it's being reduced to a sum of its parts. It's being reduced to, it does this, it does this, it does this, instead of this will help you do that. So outcome-based selling is, okay, what's the change and transformation this feature set can give to our client base? So if I'm selling widget X, it's not about how amazing the widget X is and how it took 20 years of engineering and it's made by the finest quality materials. All of them are useful, good pieces of information as backup. But the main proposition is this widget X is going to enable you to do Y. So if I've got a feature, the feature will facilitate some kind of transformation or some kind of outcome, a result into their business, and helping salespeople understand those transformational elements. And every business sells some form of transformation. Even if you're in purchasing software, it allows a company to make better decisions. So purchasing software gives you a better way to make decisions about buying goods. Great. That's so you will get the best value, you will get the best terms and the best delivery prices, which can impact your cash flow. It can improve your cash flow. It can protect you from da, 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 da. It means that you get the best margins and all of those things. So it's the outcome that really delivers the result. And that also leads into, well, okay, how do we really understand where our prospects are at in terms of reading them from the feedback we get? What's a receptive pitch? What's being received well and what's not? Reading the person and going, am I boring them? Or am I just, vomiting a sales pitch? How do I know when to change if you're in a first conversation and it takes goes off on a tangent, how do I read that? How do I steer that back? Because I'm reading the prospect, I'm reading the decision maker to see how they're responding to me. So I know when to shut up, I know when to ask more questions, and I know what the gauge of their appetite level is. We've all seen, hopefully not, but we've all experienced where we've gone to a salesperson's pipeline and You go, this looks fantastic. And then as you start to scrutinize some of the elements, they fall apart because you realize that maybe the salesperson's enthusiasm and energy has got the better of them, and something on the, your spreadsheet or pipeline that they feel is solid is actually just not. Helping a salesperson to be able to read what's good, what's hard, what's soft in terms of pipeline is massive. And of course, relationship development. You know, you have this on. I get a couple of cold calls. I get some on my mobile, and I get some on my office line. And I'll just tell you about something that happened recently. It was fascinating that this happened, and it speaks again to how a lot of the sales discipline is just learned. So I had a call from a company, and I don't answer our office line, but they came through and asked, "Hey, is Dean there?" Right. So they used my first name. Great sales tactic. It sounds more informal. They asked who's calling, and they said their first name. They didn't say the company name, and they asked what was it regarding, and they said, "Oh, we've been speaking for the last couple of weeks on stuff," and I didn't know the gist of it. So anyway, it created this level of doubt of who's this person, and maybe I had spoke to them. So it achieved a result in that it got me connected with that salesperson. But then when the call happened and I realized actually that was all a tactic, I suddenly felt quite angry because they misled a member of staff. And so why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm telling you this story because obviously for what I do, I asked them why did they do this, and kind of thumb screwed them a little bit. And the guy, bless him, he was just doing his job, but he said, "This is how we do things." And I said, "Okay, what do you mean by that? How we do?" It's what everybody does. That's how we've been told we get through to people. So you think about that and you go, these salespeople don't have the ability to create a relationship. They don't have ability to go, how can I build a bond with the people who are the gatekeepers so that I can get an opportunity in their diary? Because, if you're trying to talk to a busy decision maker, a busy CEO, you got to win the trust of the PA or the EA. They don't know how to develop the relationships. And even when you get to that first call, coming back to the emotional intelligence, you've got to tie that in to build that rapport. If you end up on a call with a decision maker you've never met before, how do you disarm them? How do you get a good kind of vibe going with them so that it feels like, this was a positive conversation. It wasn't me sat there feeling awkward whilst this person pitches me. It actually felt like a good conversation. So relationship development skills, how do we break the ice? How do we get the conversation going? How do we make it an enjoyable conversation? How do we follow up in a way that's relational so that people feel like, yeah, this is good? Because ultimately, your decision makers are making a decision about whether they do business with you based on your proposal, based on your quote, but also based on how well they got on with that salesperson. Do they think they established a decent relationship? And does that decision maker feel like they could work with that person? Now, you'll argue, well, yeah, but they're not going to work with that person. But that's probably the only person they've met in most scenarios, the only representative they meet. It's funny, really, isn't it? I cut my own sentence off. We don't have a education system that supports sales training, and it helps people understand those fundamental elements. Yet, they are the ambassadors for an entire company. They are the representatives. So a lot of our decision makers make decisions about who to do business with simply off the back of the salesperson and how the salesperson has been. It's fascinating, really, that we think about this. So outcome-based selling is critical because that's where people go, I can see if I invest in this service, if I buy this product, it's going to help me get to there. It's going to solve these challenges, and it's going to help me achieve a result and an outcome. So this is really important, outcome-based selling. Otherwise, what happens if you don't have a process to do this, you revert to features, which becomes you're selling the sum of your services parts, which is subjective to how much your decision makers feel they're worth. Whereas when you sell to the value, your service is pegged to the value of the outcome, which is a very different value. If there's a high priority for a decision maker and you align your service, so your service, you can demonstrate that your service, your product can help them get to that outcome in a more efficient, more productive way, they will align better with your proposition. So storytelling, I did put storytelling on here, but for my slides, I wanted to keep them simple. And yeah, as I was making it, I was like, storytelling, it doesn't fit, and I don't want to hyphenate it. So I abbreviated it to story. But there's really three elements I want to talk about with this storytelling. Storytelling's banded around now as kind of some kind of title. I'm a storyteller and all this kind of stuff. But human nature has been, we engage with stories. You look at most of your most enjoyable conversations, they've been around stories. And so one of the great things about stories, not just the fact that we engage with stories much better than transmitting information, is that it brings people together around something interesting. We love stories. Yeah. Netflix has made a very big business out of telling stories to us in film. But a sales skill is using stories to create a bond between decision maker and salesperson. But it's also used to explain more complex parts of maybe a service where you don't want to get bogged down into technical detail. It's used to show people the value by giving examples of other people's experience without going very formal into like a formal case study and let me show you a use case. So it's a much more informal way to land a message. It's a much more informal way to communicate value. So storytelling becomes a really important element. And I'll give you an example. Most of the occasions, if you think about it, let's say we go a bit old school and you get a first call with a potential customer and you have a Zoom call booked in. So you attend the Zoom call and you are well aware, I'm well aware, you're well aware that those first few minutes, there's a pressure to break the ice. There's always this pressure to break the ice. And how well you break the ice in that first few minutes can determine the success of the whole conversation. Now, look at what happens in those Zoom calls. What's the first thing we revert to? We go and try and tell stories. Try and tell stories that engage. Yeah. And we try and get the decision maker to tell a story too. Why? Because one, when we tell a story, it helps somebody engage with us and we feel good about it. But when a decision maker tells a story to us, they feel good about it too. They feel like we've listened. They feel like they've got their message out. Rather than often we just blast information and transfer information. Stories are a way to get information from here to here. People remember stories much more easily. I can tell you things that were said to me many, many years ago. Somebody said to me, maybe 23 years ago, I can tell you, somebody said to me, Dean, whatever subject you present on, make sure you've got at least 4 times the amount of information and speaking information that you're going to deliver in the time. So what he was basically saying was, if you're going to talk for an hour, make sure you've got 4 hours worth of knowledge at least that you can deliver, and you'll never run out of things to say. You'll never get stuck or run out of what to say because you're a subject matter expert. And salespeople should be subject matter experts and have a way that they can use stories to seed value. They know how to structure them so that they go, I need to build rapport on this call. I'm not just going to turn up and wing it. I need to build rapport on this call. What are some of the great stories I've got that can warm them up? What's happened in my week? And how do I tell that story in a way that keeps them engaged? And it's not just this random story of, oh, yeah, I went to the shops this morning. That was fantastic. And it's like, what? And how do we engage the emotion? How do we use a story, or we structure a story that gets our value across, so the prospect stays interested in this conversation and doesn't think, oh, here we go, this is going to be like pulling teeth. We structure the story, but we engage their emotions in the story. This is fundamental, because when you engage somebody's emotions, it creates a reaction. And if you look at your own memory, most of our memory is wrapped up in emotion. So the emotions we feel at the time actually stick with us longer than often the information. And we remember how we felt on a call. And so engaging the emotions through storytelling warms people to us, engages people. So storytelling, you might think, oh, that's the marketing thing, and that's what, brand storytelling and all that kind of stuff. No. Storytelling is a skill that are all salespeople. I remember I used to work with a guy, and he would have been in his 60s at the time. He was still a salesperson, drove this huge, big BMW 7 Series. I was in my early 20s. And I used to love listening to him because he had all sorts of stories that I found useful. And whenever he tried to explain something, he'd say his point, and then he'd share a story. And he'd say, oh, it's like this. And I remember when. And, we can take the mix sometimes that older people tend to share a lot more stories, but it's a much more engaging way to communicate. It's a much more interesting way to communicate. It's a much more impactful way to communicate. And so I remember Ralph, I don't know where he is now. He must be in his 80s or 90s if he's still around. But he always had some great stories he'd be able to share in any sales conversation. And you could see the prospects grin and amusement and interest in the story, which, if you have that kind of positive interaction, it's only going to make the rest of the process go more smoothly. So engaging the emotions through storytelling, it's not just a marketing skill, it's actually a sales skill. It's something, and I'm going to add to that, it's a sales skill that you have to be able to do digitally now more than ever. So, some sales people, I'll just come to the social selling because this is a really interesting point, particularly point one here, or point 1 and 2 about engaging prospects and customers. So when you engage in prospects and customers, there's a set of sales skills that a lot of people know in person. Yeah. So you can have some very charismatic salespeople, really engaging human beings in person. But then when they go to social media like LinkedIn, how do they get that same engagement? How do they engage with people through email in a way that's more warm and encourages more conversation? How do they engage prospects in a digital environment where it's harder for them to get their personality across? Sales is not zeros and ones. It's actually about convincing human beings of things. And so there is an element, a new skill, actually. And I think more and more we're going to see this new skill of how do I engage prospects in a digital environment? How do I engage customers in a digital environment? How do I build up that rapport? How do I create those conversations? How do I build trust in a digital environment where, people would read our body language and decide how well they trusted us based off their reaction to us? All that's gone. And now we have a digital presence. How do we do that on a video call? How do we do that through written words on email? How do we do that on LinkedIn, which is a big B2B platform? How do we do it generally on social media? How do we build that trust? Well, let me give you some examples. Just consistently being around the prospects and the customers can help build trust. Why does everybody need a personal brand? Everybody's talking about personal branding these days. Does it even matter? Many salespeople will say to you, I don't need a personal brand. I just want to find the people who are interested in buying and close deals. And that's fantastic. But actually more and more, I think it's something like 45% of decision makers are now vetting the people by going to their LinkedIn profile before they decide to reply to the email. What does that brand look like? What do they look like on LinkedIn? Are they representing your company right? How do they build that personal brand that signifies trust? These are all elements of social selling which become a core component of driving that sales engine, because more and more you are going to be prospecting in a digital environment. You're going to be doing business in a digital environment. Yes, there'll be times when you go to trade shows and you go and visit people in person, but I think now we're getting to that point where that is seen as second stage of sales, the second meeting. It's not the first meeting anymore. It's not the first encounter with a prospect. It's probably the second, third, or fourth even. And sometimes we don't even meet the prospects in person anymore. So how does that brand, and I know that's kind of it's a bandied around term, but how does your salesperson position themselves as trustworthy, credible, and a general good human being in amongst all of the noise on their emails, all of the noise on their LinkedIn profile? And final one, and this will save you a lot of money, this negotiation. Salespeople, and I've seen this, sorry, salespeople can be so eager to close a deal because they're so driven, yeah, that they want to we get to the negotiation stage where the clients go, oh, I don't know, can we do it for this? Can we do it for that? How does your salesperson effectively negotiate? What are the stages? You know, somebody used to tell me in a sales environment, whoever speaks first loses. Yeah. And there is an element of that in any sales negotiation, that don't be too quick to give a discount. Do you need to give discounts, or can you add value? What are the skills to be able to create a win-win? I mean, negotiation should be a win-win. You get a client, you get great favorable terms, and you get a good margin, and they get a great deal that they can see was a great deal. There is a win-win, and every salesperson needs to know how to create a win-win through understanding the phases of negotiation, getting the skills that they need to negotiate comfortably so they don't feel out of their depth, they don't feel awkward, they don't feel pressured to close the deal. And so they feel a negotiation hand is weak. And the techniques, what are the techniques where they can navigate even some of the more fierce negotiations? So these skills are important because negotiation gone wrong and you lose a deal. And, we're aware of that. But there's something more than that. Negotiations gone wrong and you win the deal at the wrong price, or you win the deal at the wrong terms. And then what happens is you close a deal that suddenly becomes a bit toxic because salesperson, I've closed it. Awesome. But then when you realize the terms, it's like, maybe we're not going to make any money. Maybe this might be more work than we thought, or they threw something in that's actually incredibly difficult. So negotiating, understanding the red lines, understanding what a great deal is for both sides, understanding how to negotiate well so it doesn't become a confrontation, but also it becomes a fair negotiation. All really important parts of the skill set of a salesperson. And if you want to supercharge and build that sales engine, your sales team have to know how to engage in negotiation skills. Again, you can go on Google and YouTube and study them all, but actually what you need is to be able to go from, okay, I've got the information, what's the practical application? So salespeople don't just watch a YouTube video and try and remember it, but they have some tools that will help them change their behavior so that they can get better at negotiating. Final one, account management. So account management is, okay, we've got the deal. How do we make sure that deal goes through well? How do we develop the opportunity? So if we get into an account and they're spending £10,000 a month with us, or £5,000 a month with us, but you can see a 15, 20, £25,000 a month opportunity with that client. How do we develop that? How do we not let the salespeople disengage because they've got their sale done, but see that there's an opportunity to develop the account? Um, Not just in terms of spend, but some of the companies you may be dealing with will have multi-sites. And can you develop it? And how do you develop your existing relationships to open up new opportunities in other divisions, other sites, other locations? How generally do you develop that? How do you engage the different stakeholders so that that relationship stays successful and stays positive, where maybe there's other opportunities that need to bring other stakeholders on side? How does a salesperson engage in that? How do they develop that so that they can almost leverage it? Some businesses that you will want to do business with, you can get your foot in the door with one wedge of the business, one tiny wedge of the business, and then the salesperson's job is to have the skills to go, okay, how do I work out from here and build out this account, develop it? And that's about engaging with the right people, building rapport with the right people, getting the buy-in from the right people. And that involves, perfect flow here, mapping the development of the account. I was working with a company recently, and they have more than 300 million pounds of opportunity just by developing the accounts they've already got. 300 million pounds, where they've got so much of their spend, but they know that there's this much spend, and they've quantified it, they've mapped it, and then they know who the decision makers are. And then they're looking at, how do we engage our prospects in a way that doesn't feel pushy or engineered, to get our prospects and our target audience, our stakeholders, to engage with us, to open those other opportunities within different business units, different locations, different decision makers. And how do we leverage the relationships we've got to actually create more opportunities? So account management's really, really important. A lot of salespeople will do a deal and move on, and don't realize, actually, if they work that account, continue to work that account, stay invested in that account, even if they're not maintaining the account in terms of service delivery or product delivery, staying involved in that account can actually be very lucrative for them, because it's easier to upsell a customer you've already got than it is to create a new customer from scratch. So salespeople can have immense value in being involved in the account management, from a development, from building relationships with existing and new stakeholders. But it comes down to, how do we map and plan that development? How do we make that happen? So these are some of the keys, components that have to be in place to make that sales engine, that machine that just turns and works. So all 5 of them are important. And if you have one that's a bit dysfunctional, you'll lose opportunity. And if you have one that works better than others, you'll find you'll have a bottleneck. It's just the way it works. Everything in life and in business is a series of almost cogs that work and turn together. And so every one of these, I could say, well, yeah, that one's the most important. That one's the most important. Prospecting, getting first meetings is the most important thing. And that's sometimes how we think, get calls booked. But if your salespeople don't know how to run a call successfully, or maybe they do to a level, you'll find that the success of those calls, they'll have to have more and more calls to get a decent deal size, or they'll have to go through a ton of prospects to get a good deal, because they don't have the skills on the call. They got great development, prospecting, but weak on calls. Or they got great on calls, but weak on the prospecting. Or they're great on the prospecting and the calls, but they don't know the follow-up. They don't know how to engage. They don't know how to move it forward. They don't know how to get it unstuck. They don't know all of that stuff. That all of these stages, all of these elements are contingent on each other. So, I missed one. Financial acumen. Right. I'm going to put this one in because, and I've got a typo there. Financial acumen is really important, because when you're running an account, when you're developing an account, it's important to know, and your salespeople know, how much money is being made. Number one, how much money is being made, and whether it's a good deal. Quite simply, is it a good deal? And so you may think, well, hang on a minute, do we really need to know this? Do salespeople really need to understand what is a good deal? Well, a deal at any cost is not a good deal. And salespeople can spend a lot of time pursuing leads where maybe their credit score isn't up for your terms. Maybe their margins that they want doesn't work for you. Maybe they don't know how to study financials in terms of P&Ls and balance sheets to know, is this a good fit? Maybe the financials and the size of the company, they don't know how to weigh that up and understand what's a good prospect, what's not a good prospect. So these financial acumen, a base level of financial acumen, so that they don't waste time on the wrong prospects, but also so that they understand the language and fundamentally in here, be able to communicate effectively with financial leaders within those businesses. You do not want a scenario where your salesperson's presentation is unpicked by a CFO, or where a salesperson goes a bit vague and a bit woolly in the financial presentation. And then you've got a CFO or finance director going, I'm not sure because they couldn't answer this base question, or they didn't give me the confidence in this area. So we miss this. I'd add that when a salesperson's trying to broker that deal and they've got to negotiate, they need to understand the financials of the deal. And, if you're an experienced, seasoned salesperson, you've learned this over time. But if you're new to sales, you may not realize, okay, well, if we take this off, what does this do to if we add this in, what does it do? So understanding the financials of the client so you can avoid wasting time on the wrong ones, understanding the lingo so that you don't look like a novice if you're ever thumb screwed by an FD, and how to engage with financial documents and financial people become really important so that you get the credibility and you don't leave people with doubt. You don't leave people wondering whether this is a good deal or a bad deal, simply because the salesperson's financial knowledge or financial lingo or the way they handle the financial conversations just feels a bit woolly. And we've all seen how you can come unstuck with that. So hopefully this has been helpful in understanding the fundamentals. And really what I want to do is give you an opportunity to go, I'm going to have a look at the Sales Academy, because all of this stuff and more is in the Sales Academy, and it's less than £1 a day. So if you've got a sales team or you're a solopreneur, go have a look. It's got all the stuff you need in micro training. So 15 minutes and shorter videos that you can consume and use. And it's designed around enabling you to do it, not just giving you information that you go, well, how do I do that? It's practical. It's something you can go learn and take away and have a go at. It's not something that you can just go, oh, that's nice theory. I've got it from Google. Somebody's told me on Google. I've got it printed out on my desk. No, this is practical enablement. So there is a discount you can get. You can get 10% off if you sign up. It's on screen there. Or you can email info@mentorgroup.co.uk and we will send you the discount code. It's a no-brainer, to be honest with you. All of this stuff from sales experts, world-class sales experts who've worked in major deals. Maybe there's some of you here watching this and you go, we're great selling to small businesses, but we struggle with corporates. There's a lot you can take away from Sales Academy for doing that. Or maybe you've changed industry and you're feeling a bit out of sorts. Maybe you're refocusing. A lot of stuff you can take away in the Sales Academy for you. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you for joining us today. There's not been many questions, so hopefully I've answered all your questions, but thank you all for joining us. Do check out Sales Academy, drop us a line for the code, and build that sales engine. It will massively improve your business. Remember that stat. If you invest in your sales enablement, and this is a no-brainer, it yields massive return on investment, because these little changes in your behavior affect deals and the conversion of the deals and the effectiveness as you creating the opportunities. So thank you for joining us, and go check out Sales Academy, and we'll be back soon with another webinar to help you grow your business and sell more effectively.